Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to the Sheep Pen. Bah, no goats allowed. Welcome to Sheep Pen News. I'm just going to give you an update on what I've been up to. So, normally I take Mondays and Tuesdays off, but I kind of violated the Sabbath this week, and I worked straight through because it was required of me to get some things done I needed to get done. So I have been on the road attempting to, and successfully actually, beginning the stages of planting these house churches. So I've been here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is my second trip. I came for the weekend, then I went home to take care of my animals and take care of things at the house and take care of a couple of personal things, and then I turned around and came right back down here to deal with yet a second group. I'm attempting to start a house church in Fort Worth and another one in Dallas. And so I just wanted to touch base with you though, because I want you to know what I'm doing with my time. Those of you that are tithing, I want you to understand that I am working for the kingdom, that I built that big youth ministry all those years ago through the sweat of my labor and through strategic use of my time. So I have gone from being the guy who sits around and theorizes about all this stuff to the guy who is putting it into action, who is putting my money where my mouth is, so to speak. I guess in so many ways I'm putting your money where my mouth is. And I want you to know that I am tirelessly and laboriously working for the kingdom. And I'm working outside of the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is just a tool to get this thing started. It's an evangelism platform. It's how I'm connecting with these people. But ultimately, I'm a church planter but we're trying to recreate the Roman Emperor, the early Roman Empire church, the underground church. I covered this in a video called the Roman Empire 2.1, or 2.0 rather. And this idea is something that God has put on my heart, and as I've reached out, I realized He's putting it on other people's hearts too. So the future of the church post-pandemic is an underground network of house churches, and to do that, you've got to have, you can't just have one pastor for 500 people. That's the mega church ideology. For this, you have to raise up many more pastors, many more workers, so that they can do the work. So I'm asking y'all to do the work of being a pastor in your community, being a religious spiritual leader in your community, in your friend group. And so as God reveals these people that are called to this, I'm traveling to them. So I'm very much in the Paul and Silas apostle role right now. And I want you guys to know that that's what I'm doing, is working towards building leaders, establishing covenants with other leaders and groups, and trying to expand this thing beyond the electronic format, right? Because this electronic format will eventually pass away. We all know what is coming. We all know what we've been prepping for, right? And this is spiritual prepping. That's one way to look at it. You know, we've talked about physical prepping here, and I told you about the famine that's coming, and now you're seeing it roll out before your very eyes. I told you about the upcoming Civil War, and now you're seeing it roll out before your very eyes. I talked about World War III, and you're seeing it roll out before your very eyes. I've been in that role, but now and I've encouraged you to physically prep. You know, buy food, buy seeds. Make sure you have security. Make sure you have water. Make sure you have a community, right? But now I'm doing the same thing, but in a spiritual role, that we are spiritually prepping. We are preparing so that we can have a spiritual foundation and other people to lean on spiritually when we come under the oppression that we all know is coming. The targeting of the church has already begun. The Roe v. Wade decision has triggered the left, and their focus is on Christian people. So these churches will be shut down, and it's God's will. It's God's will that these churches that are doing nothing, that these plexiglass pulpit, slicked back hair preacher churches that do nothing but keep people enslaved in legalism have to fall, because they're wasting God's precious resources. They're not feeding His sheep, and they're seeding into the New World Order and all of the things that go with it. And this is going to fall, and whether it's because people like me start tearing it apart from the outside and the in, which is happening, but also it's just going to fall from government control. And so we have to build something that's going to withstand this transformation of our country and our world. And God is calling me to that. And I want you to study, if you're Bible people and you wonder, where does Sage get all this? How can he justify what he's doing? Well, if we are ministering to the Greco-Roman world 2.0, and just look around, this looks more like the Roman Empire than it does America, okay? If we're having to deal with that and work in that environment, then we have to recreate the circumstances which bring about the council decision made by Paul, Silas, Peter, and James, and the other church disciple fathers, the early apostles, in the 15th chapter of Acts. If you want to know where I'm going with this, read the 15th chapter of Acts, and I will expound upon that in future messages. But if you're a Bible person and you want to know what is Sage basing this all on, I'm basing it on the 15th chapter of Acts, the evangelism where the basically Jewish group of Christians branch out and bring the gospel to the Greco-Roman world, starting in Antioch and going from there to Rome. And so if you want to know what I'm doing, I'm recreating the circumstances of the 15th chapter of Acts. And my ministry is the same ministry that Paul used to start the underground church to begin with. And so we have to step out now in that same spirit of evangelism and not try to put this heavy yoke upon these new believers, a yoke that our forefathers couldn't live by, and neither could we, and now we require these people to live by it either. So this is where this grace-based pick now whom you will serve kind of mentality comes from. It comes from the 15th chapter of Acts. Study up. And thank you to another pastor for me. Another thing that I did on this ministry trip here to Dallas-Fort Worth was that I met with another, let's say, a person who already has a small, can only be described as a house church, a small friend group where they're doing ministry amongst their friend group. And I'm trying to bring them in, but they have their own thing. But if God wants them in, they'll come in. But the Fort Worth side of things looks like it's going to take off, and I'm establishing discipleship with that leader there. If you would like to start a home group, start a small group, start a house church, if you want to start this kind of 15th chapter of Acts evangelism program with me and get involved, I will come to you. Just like this is my third trip to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I want you to understand that if that's where my money's going. So part of this is I've been taught, once again, if you don't take an offering, you won't get an offering. So I have had very little support over the last week or two from my viewers, the last week especially. And so it's just a reminder that if you believe in what we're doing, if you're getting anything from this, if you're being blessed by this ministry, if you're being blessed by this truth I'm bringing, if I have any way of moving you closer to God, I'm asking you to support this ministry financially and with your prayers and with your volunteer work and involvement. But especially, I need an influx of cash, because even though I drive a Corolla, and even though I have no problem eating out of a brown paper bag or getting fed by the people that I'm ministering to, it's still an expense. It's an expense above just keeping my house and my electric on. So if you're already giving, just keep doing it. If you're not giving, or you could give more, if you have extra, help me out, because it's funding this ministry, this mission that I'm on. This mission wasn't just to release the information. It was to follow through with it. And then it was to build this underground church. And you are already a member of it. But sooner or later, this format is going to become unfriendly for us. Sooner or later, this whole electronic means of communication is going to cease or come under the control of the government. So we've got to put together this network of like-minded people. So if you like the message here, if you see the worth and the value of it, I'm asking you for your support, for your continued support, and for your additional support. And I'm going to do as much of this as I can scrape up the money for. And, a lot of people started giving when I headed to the pawn shop with my guns, and that's what kind of launched all this, was to save Sage's guns. Well, I'm so committed and dedicated to this that if someone calls me to Ohio or Michigan or California, even, God forbid, I hate California. No offense, Californians, but Well, you know what you're dealing with. I decided I'll go wherever God sends me, right? But if I have to make these trips, it costs money. And there's expenses involved in making these trips and spend, because you got to spend one-on-one time with people. You got to look them in the eye. You know, ministry happens best face to face. So I need your continued support. I love you all. Thank you so much to everyone who's fed me, who has seeded into this ministry. And I know that God is going to bless you in so many different ways, because what God ordains, He sustains, and the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. And I am under God's orders right now. That's what ordained means. It means being ordered by God. So I'm being ordered by God out into the world. I'm being ordered by God out of the cabin in the woods and back into Sodom and Gomorrah, back into the Roman Empire 2.0, to set up these safe havens and to activate these people into ministry and to build this network that will survive what is coming, so we can survive what is coming. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you, and may He bless you in all your ways.